What up, NSP fam?
What's going on,
gang?
What's up?
We're back at it again with another banger. Yes, sir, man. We got a little video y'all highly requested. Gangs of London by Traveler Russ. We got Moscow 17 and Zone 2.
Not 6, but 2.
Man, let me find out what they're talking about without further ado.
Let's get straight to it, man.
Play.
I'm here on the Brandon estate in South London, home of the drill crew Moscow 17. And in today's episode of Gangs of the World, we're going to be taking a closer look at one of the most notorious feuds in London drill history. One that started in the streets, made its way to music, and ultimately ended in tragedy with multiple members losing their lives.
I thought music started in the streets, but...
There is another murder on the Brandon estate.
3 men have been stabbed in South London. One died of his injuries.
Whoa, this is recent. Like, some shit it'd be like from 08 or something. It's like 4 years ago.
There is another murder on the Brandon estate.
3 men have been stabbed in South London. One died of his injuries. It happened last night in Camberwell, on the same road where 17-year-old Raheem Ainsworth Barton died from a gunshot wound last May.
2 days after Raheem Barton died from gunshot wounds here in South London, his loved ones are still numb with grief.
Damn, never heard of these niggas.
As part of this ongoing series, we've been taking a closer look at the gang culture behind some of the most popular rap music of the last decade. We've recently delved into New York's Wu and Shu gangs popularized by Pop Smoke, as well as how the Black Disciples and Gangster Disciples emerged from Chicago in the 60s, which developed over the many decades that followed, ultimately spawning the modern-day battles between O-Block and Tuckerville, a war in the streets that made legends of its key players like King Von and FBG Duck. But today, I'm going to take on something much more close to home, and take a look at one of the most violent beefs in recent British drill history. A battle between two crews famous in London for both the hard-hitting music they made during this period, as well as a shocking degree of violence which unfortunately spilled out into the streets of London. With some of the incidents in this story being made even more shocking by the fact that guns are completely illegal in the UK, with some members of these groups being involved in brazen, broad daylight shootings in the middle of London for all of the public to see. A beef that ended up being so intrinsically linked with the music that London's Metropolitan Police were even forced to step in and censor the music of those involved. This is the story of Moscow 17 and Zone 2. Before we go any further into the video, I just want to give a big shout out to my boy, A Puncho, on YouTube for giving me some amazing advice when I was researching this video, so make sure you go and sub to him for more UK street stories. Today's story takes place in the south of London, with the first group hailing close to an area of South London known as Elephant and Castle. This area is known to a number of blocks, also known as estates, or what you Americans may refer to as the projects. This includes the infamous and now demolished Haygate estate, the Browning estate, the Aylesbury estate, which has been singled out by the police and the media extensively for gang activity over the years, and most relevant to this story, the Brandon estate, where the majority of the members that we're going to be discussing in this video hail from. An estate which, much like O-Block in our previous video was named the most dangerous block in America, has been singled out as being the deadliest in Britain. In fact, I actually used to live just off of this estate, and you might even recognize it from the background of my old Posh and Beck's music video. Now, the spot that connects many of these areas is the main strip in Elephant and Castle, known as Walworth Road, a long road which runs from the centre of Elephant and Castle near the Underground station, all the way down through Camberwell past these estates, becoming Camberwell Road, which eventually crosses with Peckham Road, leading east to Peckham, an area...
Peckham, yeah. Y'all go check out the video, man. Y'all know we fed y'all with the Peckham video.
It's becoming Camberwell Road, which eventually crosses with Peckham Road, leading east to Peckham, an area which we will later identify as belonging to the Ops. So, you're welcome for the geography lesson, but I know you're wondering how on earth this relates to gang culture. Well, the local G's in Elephant and Castle were once running together under the banner of Woolly Road or Woolly Hood, an obvious reference to the main strip of their hood being Walworth Road. As is often the case with street gangs that have rapping members, Woolly Road or Woolly Hood was of course immortalised forever in the lyrics of rapping OGs that came from this area.
These are the best verses you'll ever hear. Murders, best burners, very heavy here. What way and got 'em? No one can stop them. Woolly Hood, what's really good? What's poppin'?
The original Woolly Road crews of the 90s and noughties were apparently at one point even cool with the gang sets from over in Peckham, such as SN1, which if you don't know is actually the set that Drake's rapping buddy from his song KMT, Giggs, reps. In fact, years ago, we even saw the likes of Giggs teaming up with Woolly Road rapper Buck from the OTB set in freestyle sessions that are still floating around online. But don't get it twisted, there were early beefs between Peckham, Peckham and Woolly Road sets, such as the set MOB or Mandem on Brandon, having issues with SI, standing for Shoot Instant, from Peckham, with there being several early incidents of violence between these two South London-based groups. But again, much like we saw with the gangs of Chicago, over the years, generations of local gangsters grew old, leaving the younger, newer generation to emerge. In fact, you're going to notice a whole bunch of similarities between South London gang culture and Chicago gang culture, because as was the case with the old Chicago blocks of the 70s and 80s, in South London, eventually the government stepped in and knocked down local blocks in this area like the Haygate estate, leaving some of the new generation of young G's displaced and looking to create new alliances both in the streets and in the booth.
So where did these displaced families go? Just let us in the comment section, because clearly they was living there. Now where they at?
Just demolished them all.
We just want to know, curious.
Of young G's displaced and looking to create new alliances both in the streets and in the booth, with new young sets popping up in the area repping their local estates. For example, you had the AY17 set repping the Aylesbury estate and Browning 17 representing the Browning estate. And if you're wondering, the 17 is actually borrowed from one of the postcodes that is in Elephant and Castle. Now, one of the rapping older G's from the new generation of Woolly Road was a rapper called SP17, who himself had a bit of a poppin' underground drill track in 2016 called Moscow, with the song itself being about the kind of guns that the local gangsters were able to get their hands on. Of course, with guns being completely illegal in the UK, the majority of the weapons that would end up in the hands of these Gs would be old Russian-made military weapons that were likely smuggled in from Eastern Europe. It actually kind of became a bit of a trend in UK drill around this time for people to refer to guns as Russians. In fact, this is actually why the British rapper Russ calls himself Russ, because it's actually short for Russian or Russ with the Russian. Get it? Because he's got...
What's millions?
It's before he got the millions.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Got a Russian. At a certain point, this slang caught on, and because there were so many of these illegal Russian guns floating around these areas, particularly the Brandon estate, this led to that block being nicknamed Moscow, with the youngers from the Browning estate eventually starting their own crew in the streets and in the vocal booth, being collectively known as Moscow 17. And at the end of 16, members from Moscow 17 would release breakout drill songs like the track Violence and, of course, Moscow March. These early tracks introduced us to Moscow 17 members for the first time, including the likes of GB, Screw Loose, and Kizzy T. And as Moscow 17's crew of rapping drillers begun to pick up steam, we'd soon be introduced to even more talented members through new freestyles and songs, especially the likes of Incognito, aka SK, who would later be most well known for his solo tracks Blessed and Friggy, his right-hand man being the non-rapping member JB or Jet Black, and through other songs or at least lyrics referencing G's that they would hang out with, we would get to know even more members like Rhino, Maskey, who actually had a big early song with Lowski from the Harlem Spartans called Mummy's Kitchen. There was Knockout Ned, Rizzy Ramps, also known as Rampage, Ted Matic, and maybe a few others who I don't necessarily need to name. And this is by no means an exhaustive list of every member or affiliate of Moscow 17, but it is the lineup of the people who were most actively repping the set during this period and the people who are going to be most relevant to the story. So, who are their ops?
Ads on YouTube must be so annoying, but with 3 clicks, you can install an ad blocker and you'll never see ads again.
It's about to get serious when they get the name in the ops.
Zone 2. Let's see what it is.
If you follow Woolly Road south through Camberwell and then hit a left at Peckham Road, you will eventually end up at Peckham. Now, you might already be aware that Peckham was made famous by the charming antics of Rodney and Delboy in the old show Only Fools and Horses. But you really would have to be a fool to get yourself caught lacking in modern-day Peckham, because it's this district that has one of the most long and violent histories in all of South London gang lore. As I mentioned earlier, national treasure of roadman rap, Giggs, is famously from Peckham and repped SN1, his set of the Peckham Boys. And when it came to gangs, the Peckham Boys were serious business in the 90s and the noughties, having had a long and violent beef with nearby ops, the Ghetto Boys, a beef that saw Peckham Boys regularly shooting up nightclubs with automatic weapons, including one incident at the ironically named Chicago's Club in 2000 that actually left 9 people injured. In fact, Giggs has even mentioned in some of his early freestyles having straps in the back of Chicago's. At a certain point, the violence in Peckham got so bad, some of the locals begun to refer to it as Peck-Nam, because people were out there dying like it was the Vietnam War. Not dissimilar to how people call Chicago Chirac. In fact, while we're on the topic of similarities with Chicago, the 2000 killing of 10-year-old Damiola Taylor by 2 16-year-old brothers associated with Peckham.
Wait, why is this nigga showing up? This nigga right here, that's the actor.
Right.
is eerily similar to what happened to 11-year-old Robert Yummy Sandifer in Chicago at the hands of the Black Disciples. And just seeing these similarities between Peckham and Chicago, right down to the impact that it's having on the innocent preteen children that are growing up in these areas, really just drives home how similar the awful consequences of gang activity can be anywhere you are in the world. In fact, you might even be surprised to know that superstar actor John Boyega is actually from Peckham and was even a childhood personal friend of Damiola Taylor, with it being reported that Boyega was actually one of the last people to see him alive. Mad. Anywho, we had rappers like Giggs and others emerge from out of the Peckham boys, trying to make it and get successful in music legitimately. Thing is, the bag was much more difficult to secure at this time. This was pre-streaming, but post-music piracy, which of course means that the best way to make money at the time for a rapper was to perform shows. However, once London's Metropolitan Police realised, they came up with a new way to finesse rappers called the Form 696, a document that promoters would have to submit to police before a concert was allowed to go ahead. But what happened is that the police ended up using these forms to target and prevent shows happening specifically from the rap and grime genres, a practice which was identified many years later as having an inherent racial bias. So in the face of rappers being unable to perform, that's where we saw the absolute legend in the game, the big dog Tim Westwood himself, stepping in and creating his legendary Crib Sessions series, providing platforms for rappers that had been deplatformed by the police and inviting them to perform mini gigs, excuse the pun, at his home, recording them and uploading them to YouTube without the interference of the police, with the very first Crib session ever, of course, being Giggs' SN1 session. And to this day, Westwood is still using his Crib session format to give opportunities to the greasiest drill rappers that London has to offer. Ironically, eventually attracting the attention of the police, who would go on to remove both Moscow 17 and Zone 2 Crib sessions from YouTube, but more on that later. So from the Peckham boys spawned the younger generation, Younger Peckham Boys, or YPB. And just like we've seen so far with Moscow 17 or the Chicago BDs and GDs, over the years, what with police involvement, members being locked up or killed or simply displaced by housing authorities, as the years went by, these subsets and younger groups also became more fragmented and split up. But eventually, out of YPB, we would see several babyface rappers who would go on to become future drill legends, particularly a 12-year-old kid called Preacher, who would later go by the name PS, and another talented little scamp called Nutcase, who would later change his name to Nasty and then again to Quengface. Another young...
Didn't Quengface get... Bro, I know we reacted to some shit that had Quengface in it.
Quengface, yeah, we did. I just can't remember what video it was.
Y'all let us know in the comment section below.
I think it was
an eventual real killer would be Denz, later going by the name D Squeezo, and at a certain point several of these rapping members joined up together to create a road rap crew called 365. Together they would drop posse cuts and freestyles, showcasing their talent and also introducing us to new members. People like Shay Squeeze, Trizak or Trizla, Karma, Scully, Snoopy, LR, and Mad Max, who isn't that active now for quite sinister reasons that we can get into later. Now, this crew eventually would change their name from 365 to Zone 2 and releasing their first official project, the No Hook mixtape. I just want to say, setting aside the crazy beef that we're about to get into, Zone 2's music is genuinely really good and some of the most underrated UK drill that the country has to offer. Zone 2's musical legacy is actually very cohesive, partly because Carnes Hill, the iconic drill producer and pioneer of the sound, who famously brought Brixton-based drill crew 6-7 sound to life, would come through and produce full-length projects for Zone 2, including their 2018 tape Hillside Zoo, which in my opinion is genuinely one of the hardest drill or rap projects ever made. And some of...
Y'all let us know in the comment section below if we should, check that out at our own time. I don't know about reacting to it.
Stuff they say on there is so devilish, I feel like I'm going to hell just listening to it. The project actually features a blood-stained elephant on the cover art, which probably doesn't take too much interpretation. Anyway, so Zone 2 and Hit Squad, the seemingly street-focused crew of Zone 2 affiliates actually doing dirt in the streets, would of course accumulate a lot of members, not all of whom are relevant to this story. So for the record, there might be several names who you think should be included here. I'm not going to include, because it's either not relevant to this story or I can't verify the facts that they were involved beyond social media speculation. But this is the core group of people who are at least known to have been associated with Zone 2 or released music with them over the period this story takes place. So now you know the crews and members involved, we can take a closer look at how this beef started and how it would eventually escalate into deadly warfare, ultimately claiming the lives of people from both areas.
That nigga really be giving them backstories and shit.
No, actually.
Yeah, you.
Hours of research.
Don't you want to play something?
Hours? Nigga, days.
Days.
Months.
What?
Now, the true inciting incident in the beef between Moscow 17 and Zone 2 is kind of unclear. A lot of rumours have floated around over the years, but one thing is clear is that Zone 2 and Moscow 17 weren't always enemies. In November 2015, a remix to Meek Mill's song Rico was released by Incognito, who was then going as SK. Now, this music video was actually rumoured to have featured numerous members from both Moscow and Zone 2, including Quengface and Trizak. In fact, story goes, Trizak is actually Incognito's cousin, a fact which will become all the more shocking as this story progresses. Now, comments on the Reddit community UK drill would suggest that things soured between these two crews.
Niggas blood, but they really just be claiming they set instead of they blood. That's so weird, bro. If I were to do some gang shit, bro, it'd just be with family. I'm sorry, bro.
Somebody from Zone 2 robbed the house of a Moscow affiliate. Initially with a Moscow member trying to get back some of those stolen items, ultimately resulting in them being stabbed. This would lead to various tit-for-tat retaliations between these two groups, which would escalate each time, with two particularly shocking incidents occurring in mid-2016. One where a 15-year-old member, whose identity is unclear due to them being a minor at the time, being chased through a busy fun fair and stabbed numerous times in front of shocked families, ultimately resulting in them being airlifted to hospital but fortunately surviving. This comes along with another incident where allegedly a Moscow member was badly stabbed, eventually being found in a Camberwell McDonald's, located right on the corner where Walworth Road that becomes Camberwell Road meets Peckham Road, an incident that seems to have been referenced numerous times in Zone 2 lyrics since. And it's alleged that during these tit-for-tat skirmishes between Moscow and Zone 2, that Moscow member Tizzy T was also attacked and stabbed, an incident that was allegedly so bad that his heart briefly stopped, with him, at least for a moment, being legally dead. Tizzy T fortunately survived this incident and supposedly retaliated in a violent attack that quickly caught the attention of the Metropolitan Police. It's said that this prompted Tizzy T to flee the UK before the feds could catch up with him, and to this day, it's said he has never returned. In fact, the only hint to his whereabouts seemed to be a Snapchat from Harlem Spartans member Lowski in 2020, seemingly depicting them both together in Nigeria. Anyway, despite all of the goings-on in the streets...
Damn, bro, why you exposing it?
Even if, bro, they're not finna go find that man.
Nigeria. Nobody's gonna Nigeria's not gonna extradite their own.
Taste that fans were getting off of this beef was on wax, as these crews would go back and forth calling each other out publicly in diss records. And fans hungry for information on the beefs popping off in the south of London would gobble up new songs from both sides. And sometimes things went beyond song lyrics. Zone 2 dropped their song Zone 2 Step, which was actually filmed on the Moscow 17 block, the Brandon estate, at 7:40 p.m, a fact that was documented extensively in the music video as supposed proof that their ops aren't truly active on their block. Moscow, of course, dropped their famous song Moscow March, which was one of the first UK drill songs to actually hit 1 million views, and to this day, despite having been taken down by the cops, is still a legendary song in UK drill history. Moscow also dropped tracks like City of God, which featured a high-energy performance from GB, where he named numerous ops who had supposedly been injured by Moscow members by name. From here, things would continue to go back and forth on wax, with members from each side continuing to use their songs to brazenly brag about the violent attacks that they had carried out on their ops. And all of this seemingly without a care in the world as to how incriminating this might come across. And eventually, each group respectively got their own Tim Westwood crib session. Performances which once again were wall to wall, with specific references to names and claims of attacks that had been carried out against the other side. Now, obviously, all of the name calling on both sides had everybody involved very jumpy and eager to pounce on the ops. And a lot of incidents between these crews in 2017 do remain in the streets, and I suppose to a lesser extent in the Reddit and YouTube comments. But eventually, in 2017, the beef would become deadly and finally reach the newspapers when a teenage Zone 2 affiliate was killed in the middle of Peckham. Now, during the height of this beef, Incognito was known for spinning blocks on his moped, looking for ops in broad daylight, even broadcasting this activity on his Snapchat, as was Jet Black and Loose Screw, as well as Zone 2 members. However, rolling around in highly populated areas of London with dangerous weapons is a very hot activity and not really advisable. So in May of 2017, JB from Moscow 17 was apparently arrested after being caught with a samurai sword in public. Whilst he was being arrested, it is alleged that a Zone 2 member actually witnessed the arrest, and while it's not definitively clear exactly who that was, what we do know is that that man's younger brother was a young man named Abdi Rahman Mohammed, aka Abs. Now, Abs had allegedly been mocking Jet Black for this arrest, something which was taken as the utmost disrespect. So around 3 weeks after the samurai sword arrest, it was alleged that Incognito and Jet Black had caught Abs eating food outside of a chicken shop in Peckham on Southampton Way. And at around 11 p.m. on the 2nd of June 2017, it was alleged that Abs was approached by two men and stabbed in the chest with a large knife. The suspects fled the scene, leaving Abs to die outside of the Tesco in Peckham.
Lord, oh Lord, that nigga didn't even, bro. He was an innocent bystander, bro. Bro just
I mean, he did say he mocked him or something, like reenacting him getting arrested.
Niggas might be like, loser, eat. Bro, I don't get it, bro.
That's all, man. You just got it, man. Just saying your little.
Stabbed in the chest with a large knife. The suspects fled the scene, leaving Abs to die outside of the Tesco in Peckham. Not long after this, both Incognito and Jet Black were charged with murder and set for a trial at the Old Bailey. This is one of Britain's oldest and most serious criminal courts, with a history dating all the way back before the 1800s. The trial started at the end of 2017, and jurors were even played music by the defendants which referenced carrying weapons, along with images of JB being arrested with the sword, and with the defendants being identified by a friend of Abs who was with him at the time of the murder. However, Incognito and Jet Black went with the defense that they were being falsely identified by Abs' friend on purpose because of an ongoing grudge. And despite CCTV evidence and witness testimony, the jury believed this. And so, after a 5-week trial in January